So you came back again, huh? Well, today's goal is simple. Mine all the stone on the ground and replace it with dirt, and also collect spruce wood for my next project. And while I do this, I'll read you some Reddit stories I found online. So sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy. Okay, first one. This first story is titled, "My coworker thought it was a harmless prank to wrap my car in industrial shrink wrap. He ended up causing $4,000 in damages and getting arrested for felony vandalism." The poster writes, "I am a 26-year-old guy and I work in the warehouse division of a large logistics company. The job is tough, but the pay is good, and for the most part, my crew is great. About 3 months ago, management hired a new guy named Trevor, 22-year-old male. Trevor was fresh out of college and immediately decided he was going to be the office prankster. For the first few weeks, it was mostly annoying but harmless stuff. He would hide people's tape guns, put clear tape over the laser sensors on our computer mice, or switch the labels on the break room coffee pots. We all told him to knock it off, but he would just laugh and call us boomers who can't take a joke. I drive a very nice, meticulously maintained 2018 Dodge Charger. It is my baby. I park it at the very back of the warehouse lot every single day to avoid door dings. Last Friday, I clocked out after a brutal 10-hour shift. I was exhausted and just wanted to go home, shower, and sleep. I walked out to the back of the parking lot and I stopped dead in my tracks. My car looked like a giant plastic cocoon. Trevor had taken 2 massive rolls of industrial-grade, heavy-duty pallet shrink wrap from the warehouse and wrapped my entire car. He went over the roof, under the chassis, around the tires, dozens and dozens of layers. It was pulled so tight that the plastic was literally bowing my side mirrors inward. I was furious. I walked back into the warehouse and found Trevor sitting in the break room, filming me out the window with his phone and laughing hysterically. "Surprise, bro!" he yelled. "It's just a prank. You should see your face." I didn't yell. I just looked at him and said, "Trevor, that is company property you used, and you have exactly 5 minutes to cut all of that off my car before I go to the plant manager." Trevor rolled his eyes, grabbed a box cutter, and followed me out to the parking lot, still recording on his phone. "You guys are so sensitive," he muttered. He walked up to the front of my car, stabbed the heavy-duty box cutter into the thick layers of plastic, and yanked it downward to slice it open. But Trevor is an absolute idiot. He didn't just cut the plastic. He dragged the razor-sharp industrial box cutter blade straight down the entire length of my driver's side door, digging deep into the paint. The sound of the metal scratching was loud enough to make me physically cringe. I yelled and shoved him back. "What the hell is wrong with you? You just keyed my car." Trevor looked at the massive, deep 3-foot-long scratch in my custom paint job. He immediately dropped his phone and the box cutter. He went completely pale. "Bro, I didn't mean to," he stammered. "I thought there was a gap between the plastic and the door. It's just a scratch. It'll buff out." "Buff out?" I screamed. "You went through the clear coat, the paint, and the primer. You can see the bare metal." As I was yelling at him, I walked around to the back of the car to see if he had damaged anything else. That's when I noticed the exhaust. In his infinite wisdom, Trevor had wrapped the industrial plastic directly over my dual exhaust pipes. My car had been running earlier that day and the exhaust pipes had still been incredibly hot when he wrapped it. The heavy-duty plastic had completely melted and fused to the hot metal of the exhaust system. It was a hardened, toxic, melted mess of plastic bonded permanently to the metal. I pulled my phone out and immediately dialed 911. Quick pause here. The office prankster is the single worst personality type in any workplace. Pranks are only funny if both people are laughing. Wrapping someone's car is bad enough, but taking a box cutter to the paint job and melting industrial plastic to the exhaust, that is thousands of dollars in damage. You do not mess with a man's car. Let's see how Trevor handles the police. Trevor started absolutely panicking. "Bro, please don't call the cops. Please, I'll pay for it. It was just a joke. Please don't ruin my life over a joke." I ignored him and gave the dispatcher the address. Our plant manager, who had seen us arguing on the security cameras, came walking out to the parking lot. When the manager saw the melted plastic and the massive scratch down the side of my Charger, he didn't even ask questions. He looked at Trevor, took his warehouse ID badge off his lanyard, and said, "You are fired. Do not step foot back in my building." The police arrived about 10 minutes later. I showed them the damage. I also showed them the security footage that the manager pulled up, which clearly showed Trevor stealing company shrink wrap and wrapping my car. because the estimated damage to the custom paint job and the replacement of the exhaust system was over $4,000. It crossed the threshold from a simple misdemeanor into felony vandalism in our state. The officers put Trevor in handcuffs right there in the parking lot. He was sobbing, literally crying for his mom, begging me to tell the cops it was just a YouTube prank. "It's not a prank anymore, Trevor," I said as they put him in the back of the cruiser. "It's a police report." It has been 2 months. I had to file a claim with his insurance, and because he was arrested and charged with a felony, his insurance rates have skyrocketed to the point where he can't even afford to drive. He has a court date next month, he's unemployed, and he has a permanent criminal record. All because he thought he was the funniest guy in the warehouse. The auto body shop did a fantastic job though. My car looks brand new. I am giving this a standing ovation. There's nothing more satisfying than someone screaming, "It's just a prank," while they are actively being handcuffed by the police. Pranks do not excuse property destruction. The fact that the manager fired him on the spot before the cops even got there is amazing leadership. Trevor ruined his entire life for a 10-second video clip that he ended up dropping on the pavement. Anyway, absolutely brilliant. Let's keep the momentum going with the next story. This one takes workplace sabotage to a whole new level. This story is titled, "My micromanaging boss tried to secretly delete my presentation to make me look bad. He accidentally deleted the entire company's shared drive right before $1 million pitch." I am a 28-year-old female, and I used to work at a boutique advertising agency. It was a high-stress environment, mostly because of my direct supervisor, Richard. 40s M. Richard was the definition of a toxic micromanager. He was incredibly insecure, constantly took credit for my team's ideas, and actively tried to sabotage anyone he viewed as a threat to his position. Recently, our agency landed a meeting to pitch a massive rebranding campaign for a national beverage company. It was easily a $2 million contract. Our CEO told Richard and me that we were co-leading the pitch. For 3 weeks, I worked 12-hour days. I designed the slide deck, I coordinated with the graphic artist, and I built out a flawless marketing strategy. Richard, as usual, did nothing. He just occasionally sent vague emails saying things like, "Make sure it pops and synergize the demographics." The pitch was scheduled for a Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. On Tuesday evening at 6 p.m., I finished the final polish on the 50-slide presentation. I saved it to our company's secure, cloud-based shared drive under a folder explicitly named Beverage Company Final Pitch. I emailed Richard the link, told him it was ready to go, and logged off for the night to get some sleep. Wednesday morning arrives. I get to the office at 8:30 a.m., wearing my best suit, feeling incredibly confident. The clients are arriving in the boardroom in an hour and a half. I sit down at my desk, open the shared drive to pull up the presentation, and my blood runs completely cold. The folder is gone. Not just the presentation file, the entire Beverage Company Final Pitch folder. I frantically search the drive. Nothing. I check the company-wide trash bin. Nothing. It is as if the file never existed. I start hyperventilating. 3 weeks of intense work, gone. I run over to Richard's office. He is sitting at his desk, sipping a coffee, looking entirely too relaxed. "Richard, the presentation is gone," I said, trying not to panic. "The entire folder is missing from the shared drive." Richard faked a look of concern. "Oh no, are you serious? Did you forget to save it? I told you to be careful with the cloud server. This is a disaster. What are we going to show the client?" He then let out a heavy sigh. "Look, it's fine. I threw together a backup deck last night just in case something like this happened. It's not as detailed as yours, but it'll save the agency. I'll take the lead on the presentation." I stared at him. It clicked instantly. He didn't want to co-lead. He wanted to look like the hero who saved the day with his backup deck after the junior employee carelessly lost the files. He had deliberately deleted my presentation. I didn't argue. I just nodded, walked out of his office, and immediately went down to the basement to find our IT director, Gary. Gary is a wizard who lives on energy drinks and hates corporate politics. I explained the situation to him. He said, "I didn't save it, Gary. Can you please check the server logs and see if I uploaded it last night?" I begged. Gary cracked his knuckles. "Let's take a look at the audit trail." Gary typed for about 30 seconds. Then he started laughing, a deep belly laugh. "Oh, you uploaded it, all right," Gary said, pointing at his screen. "At exactly 6:02 p.m. yesterday, but Richard logged in at 11:45 p.m. last night, and he didn't just delete your presentation." Gary turned the monitor toward me. Richard is an idiot, Gary explained. He didn't know how to permanently delete a file from the cloud without it showing up in the recovery bin. So he tried to run a hard wipe command he probably Googled. But he executed it on the parent directory, not the specific folder. My jaw dropped. What does that mean? It means, Gary smiled, that Richard accidentally hard deleted the entire marketing department's shared drive. Every asset, every client file, every contract from the last 6 months. It's all gone. Oh my God, the absolute sheer incompetence of trying to be a villain and accidentally dropping a nuclear bomb on your own company. Trying to run a hard wipe command you found on Google on a corporate server? Richard didn't just dig his own grave, he bought the cemetery. The clients are arriving in 45 minutes and he just erased the entire department. Let's see the explosion. I felt a wave of pure, chaotic adrenaline. Can you recover it, Gary? Yeah, of course, Gary snorted. We have off-site backups that snapshot every night at midnight, but it's going to take me about 2 hours to restore the server. The pitch is in an hour. You guys have nothing. I thanked Gary and asked him to print out the audit log showing Richard's IP address executing the delete command. He happily handed me the paper. I walked upstairs. The clients had just arrived and were shaking hands with our CEO in the glass boardroom. Richard was standing there holding a USB drive with his backup presentation, grinning like a shark. I walked right past Richard and handed the printed IT audit log directly to the CEO. I apologize for the delay, I said loudly, making sure the clients heard me. Unfortunately, Richard logged onto our servers at midnight last night and accidentally executed a hard delete command that wiped out our entire marketing database, including the multi-million-dollar pitch we prepared for you today. The boardroom went dead silent. Richard's face turned an ashen shade of gray. He looked like he was going to pass out. That's a lie. I didn't... The CEO looked at the paper. It clearly showed Richard's unique employee login and the exact keystrokes of the delete command. The CEO's eyes widened in sheer horror. He looked at the clients who were now packing up their briefcases, looking incredibly unimpressed. If your managing director is incompetent enough to accidentally delete his own department's servers, the lead client said coldly, I don't think we trust you to manage a $2 million ad budget. We will be going with another agency. Have a good day. They walked out. The CEO slowly turned to Richard. The vein in the CEO's forehead looked like it was going to burst. You have 5 minutes to clear out your desk, the CEO said, his voice terrifyingly quiet, and expect to hear from our legal team regarding the financial damages of losing this contract due to your intentional sabotage. Richard was fired on the spot and escorted out of the building by security, crying and carrying a cardboard box. Because the entire department was effectively shut down while Gary restored the servers, the CEO sent everyone home for the day. He called me later that afternoon, apologized profusely for Richard's behavior, and offered me Richard's position as managing director. I accepted. I now have my own office, and I made sure Gary got a massive Christmas bonus. Never mess with the IT audit logs. Absolutely iconic. Walking into a boardroom full of clients and just dropping the printed audit logs like a mic drop. Richard tried to play 4D chess and ended up checkmating himself in the first move. Trying to sabotage a junior employee and ending up getting sued for a multi-million-dollar lost contract is a definition of taking it way too far and regretting it instantly. Good for her for getting the promotion, and shout out to Gary the IT guy. IT guys always hold the keys to the kingdom. This next story is titled, My Entitled Neighbor Illegally Cut Down My 100-Year-Old Oak Tree Out of Spite. She didn't realize she had just triggered federal tree law. The poster writes, I am a 32-year-old guy, and a few years ago I bought a beautiful piece of property in a quiet, heavily wooded suburban neighborhood. The main selling point of the house was this absolutely massive, gorgeous, 100-year-old white oak tree right in the front yard. It provided amazing shade in the summer, and I loved it. My next-door neighbor, a woman in her 60s named Martha, did not love it. Martha was the neighborhood menace. She spent her days aggressively manicuring her lawn with a ruler and measuring tape. From the day I moved in, she complained about my oak tree. She hated that in the autumn, the wind would blow some of the oak leaves onto her pristine driveway. For the first year, I tried to be a good neighbor. I would literally go over and rake the leaves off her driveway for her. but it was never enough. She demanded I cut the tree down. I told her absolutely not. It was a healthy, historic tree, and it was 100% on my property. She threatened to call the HOA. We don't have an HOA. She threatened to call the city. The city told her it was my tree and they couldn't do anything. Fast forward to last September. My best friend was getting married in another state, so I flew out on a Thursday morning for a long weekend. I came back late Sunday night. It was pitch black when my Uber pulled into my driveway. I was exhausted, paid the driver, and walked toward my front door. But something felt wrong. The air felt different. The silhouette of my house against the streetlights looked naked. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. My beautiful 100-year-old oak tree was gone. In its place was a massive, jagged, 5-foot wide stump. The entire front yard was covered in sawdust, deep tire tracks from heavy machinery, and crushed landscaping. I literally dropped my suitcase on the driveway. I was in a state of absolute shock. I immediately looked over at Martha's house. Her lights were off, but I noticed her pristine driveway had a few deep scratches in the concrete, likely from the heavy equipment used to haul the massive trunk away. I didn't sleep that night. I was vibrating with a level of pure, unadulterated rage that I didn't know I was capable of. At 8 a.m. sharp on Monday, I marched over to Martha's house and pounded on the door. She opened it wearing a bathrobe, looking incredibly smug. "Good morning," she said brightly. "Notice anything different? I hired a crew to finally take care of that eyesore. Now my driveway will be clean. You can just pay me back for the removal whenever you have the cash." It was only $2,000. She actually wanted me to pay her for trespassing on my property and destroying my tree. I didn't yell. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Martha, you have made the biggest mistake of your entire life." I turned around, walked back to my house, and immediately called a specialized lawyer and a master arborist. Quick pause here. Do not ever, under any circumstances, mess with someone else's trees. Tree law is a very real, very terrifying branch of the legal system, and judges do not mess around with it. The sheer arrogance to cut down a century-old tree while the owner is on vacation and then demand payment for the removal. Martha has no idea the absolute hellfire that is about to rain down on her. Let's see the damage. The master arborist arrived that afternoon. He measured the stump, examined the root system, and took dozens of photos. He confirmed it was a historic white oak, perfectly healthy and easily over a century old. Then, my lawyer explained the reality of the situation to me. In our state, if someone intentionally destroys a tree on your property without your permission, they are liable for treble damages. That means they have to pay 3 times the replacement value of the tree, but you can't just buy a 100-year-old oak tree at Home Depot. The replacement value is calculated by how much it would cost to source, transport, and successfully transplant a tree of that exact size and maturity. 2 weeks later, Martha was formally served with a civil lawsuit. The lawsuit included the arborist's official valuation of the tree, the cost of repairing the heavy machinery damage to my lawn, and the treble damages multiplier. The total amount I was suing her for was $185,000. I was sitting on my front porch when the process server handed her the thick manila envelope. I watched her open it. The smugness instantly evaporated. She let out a shriek that sounded like a dying bird. She literally collapsed onto her knees on her precious driveway, sobbing uncontrollably. She tried to fight it in court, claiming it was a neighborhood improvement. The judge was absolutely merciless. He tore into her for her blatant disregard for property rights and the brazen destruction of a historic natural landmark. Because a tree removal company she hired was just 2 unlicensed guys she found on Craigslist who chopped it down for cash, she had no corporate insurance to fall back on. She lost the case entirely. She was ordered to pay me the full $185,000 plus my legal fees. Martha didn't have that kind of money sitting in a bank account. She had to take out a massive second mortgage on her house to pay the judgment, completely ruining her retirement plans. The financial strain was so severe that she was eventually forced to sell the house just to get out from under the debt. I used the settlement money to hire a professional landscaping firm to completely redesign my front yard, including planting 3 brand new, beautiful, 10-foot tall oak trees directly along the property line. Martha moved into a tiny condo across town. I hope she enjoys having no trees and no driveway to sweep. Karma is expensive. I am applauding $185,000. That is a life-ruining amount of money, all because she couldn't handle sweeping up a few leaves in the autumn. Tree law is my absolute favorite kind of petty revenge because it is completely legal, highly scientific, and overwhelmingly devastating to entitled people. The judge showing zero mercy is exactly what she deserved. If you're going to act like a tyrant in your neighborhood, you better have the bank account to back it up. Absolutely brilliant. Alright, let's keep this train rolling with the next story. This one takes instant regret to a vehicular level. This story is titled, "A Karen Tried to Illegally Tow My Jeep from My Own Reserved Parking Spot. The tow truck ended up destroying her husband's $80,000 Porsche." I am a 25-year-old female and I live in a large gated apartment complex. Parking is a nightmare here, so I pay an extra $100 a month for a premium, reserved parking spot right in front of my building's entrance. I drive a heavily modified, lifted Jeep Wrangler. It's my pride and joy, equipped with massive off-road tires, a heavy-duty steel winch bumper, and a manual transmission. A few months ago, a new couple moved into the building. The wife, Brenda, is your stereotypical entitled Karen. The husband is a midlife crisis guy who drives a pristine, custom-ordered cherry red Porsche 911. Because they moved in late, they were assigned a parking spot at the very back of the complex, about a 5-minute walk from the door. Brenda hated this. She wanted my spot. She left passive-aggressive notes on my windshield. She knocked on my door and offered me $20 to switch spots with her permanently. When I refused, she complained to the leasing office, who told her my spot was legally on my lease and there was nothing they could do. I thought that was the end of it. I severely underestimated how petty Brenda could be. It was a Tuesday night around 11:30 p.m. I was sitting in my living room, watching Netflix, with my windows open to let in the cool breeze. My Jeep was parked in its reserved spot, backed in, with the parking brake pulled all the way up, in gear. Suddenly, I hear the loud, distinct rumble of a heavy diesel engine pulling into our parking lot. Then, I hear the beeping of a truck backing up. I look out my window. There's a sketchy, beat-up tow truck backing up directly toward my Jeep. Standing on the sidewalk, in her pajamas, pointing excitedly at my vehicle, is Brenda. I grabbed my keys and sprinted down the 3 flights of stairs. I burst out the front doors just as the tow truck driver was hooking his thick metal J-hooks underneath the front axle of my Jeep. "Hey, stop!" I yelled, running up to the driver. "That is my car! It's legally parked in my reserved spot." The driver, a guy chewing on a toothpick who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days, just shrugged. "Lady here called it in. Said it was an unauthorized vehicle in her spot. I'm just doing my job." Brenda smirked at me, crossing her arms. "I told you I was getting that spot, sweetie. Have fun paying the impound fee." "Brenda, you are psychotic," I yelled. I turned back to the driver. "Do not lift that Jeep. It is a manual transmission, it is in gear, and the emergency brake is fully engaged. It weighs 4,500 pounds. You are going to damage it." The driver rolled his eyes. "Listen, little girl, I've been towing cars for 20 years. I know what I'm doing." He walked back to the controls on the side of his truck and yanked the hydraulic lever. Oh no, 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 no. Any off-road enthusiast knows exactly what is about to happen. You do not just yank a lifted, heavy-duty 4x4 that is locked in gear with the e-brake on. That is physics 101. The amount of tension that tow cable is about to be under is terrifying. The sheer entitlement of Brenda, standing there in her pajamas, thinking she won, is going to age so poorly in about 10 seconds. Let's watch the disaster unfold. The heavy steel cable attached to the front of my Jeep started to pull tight. The tow truck's engine revved loudly, straining against the massive weight and the locked brakes of my Wrangler. The front end of my Jeep lifted an inch. The tires screeched against the asphalt, refusing to roll. "I'm warning you!" I screamed, stepping back. The driver grunted, annoyed, and pushed the hydraulic lever all the way down, attempting to forcefully yank my Jeep out of the spot. There was a sound like a gunshot. Bang! The heavy-duty metal J-hook attached to my front axle snapped clean off under the immense, impossible tension. When that hook snapped, the steel tow cable acted like a massive, terrifying rubber band. It violently whipped backward, recoiling away from my Jeep at lightning speed. It didn't hit the tow truck. It whipped right past the tow truck, flew across the driving lane, and slammed directly into the car parked in the visitor spot directly opposite my Jeep. The car that just so happened to belong to Brenda's husband. The cherry red Porsche 911. The heavy steel cable and the broken metal hook smashed through the Porsche's expensive custom windshield, absolutely pulverizing the glass. The momentum carried the heavy metal hook directly down into the dashboard, ripping through the leather, tearing the steering column in half and smashing deep into the computerized dash system. The Porsche's alarm started blaring immediately. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the wailing of the sports car's alarm. The tow truck driver dropped his toothpick. He looked at the destroyed Porsche, then looked at his broken cable. He went completely white. Brenda was frozen. Her smug smile had been completely wiped from her face, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. She let out a scream that echoed through the entire apartment complex. "My husband's car!" she shrieked, sprinting toward the ruined Porsche. I just stood there, pulled out my phone, and called the police. When the cops arrived, it was a complete circus. Brenda was hysterically crying, trying to blame me for having a heavy car. The tow truck driver was trying to quietly unhook his cables and escape, but the police stopped him. The police reviewed the complex's security cameras and my lease agreement. I proved the spot was mine. The tow truck driver was cited for operating an illegal, predatory tow without verifying the property owner's signature. His company's insurance was now completely on the hook for destroying an $80,000 sports car. But it gets better. When Brenda's husband came downstairs in his bathrobe and saw his destroyed midlife crisis mobile, he absolutely lost his mind. He didn't yell at the tow truck driver, he yelled at Brenda. It turns out, Brenda had hired a shady, unlicensed, cash-only tow company off a telephone pole flyer because all the legitimate tow companies in the city require proof of property ownership before towing from a private lot. Because the tow company was basically a ghost operation with garbage insurance, Brenda's husband had to file the claim through his own premium auto insurance. His rates skyrocketed. The Porsche was totaled because the structural damage to the firewall and the computer system was completely catastrophic. The apartment complex management was so furious about Brenda illegally contracting a predatory tow company on their property that they hit her with a formal 30-day eviction notice for violating the community safety guidelines. They moved out 3 weeks later. The husband wouldn't even look at her while they were packing the moving truck. I still park my Jeep in my premium spot every single night, and every time I set the parking brake, I smile. Don't touch my Jeep. I am in tears. The poetic justice is just too rich. The cable snapping and hitting her husband's prized sports car is a 1 in a million shot of pure karma. Brenda literally orchestrated the destruction of her own marriage and her husband's dream car, all because she couldn't walk an extra 5 minutes to her apartment. Getting evicted on top of it? That is the ultimate taking it too far and regretting it instantly scenario. Absolutely flawless. This story is titled, "My Entitled Aunt Stole My $25,000 heirloom engagement ring. She thought I would keep it in the family. I called the police and ruined her daughter's wedding instead." The poster writes, "I am a 28-year-old female, and 6 months ago, my amazing boyfriend proposed to me, but he didn't buy a new ring. Before my beloved grandmother passed away, she gave him her antique, custom-cut diamond engagement ring to give to me. It is a stunning, flawless 1920s Art Deco piece appraised at over $25,000. It is my most prized possession. My aunt, Karen, 50s F, and her daughter, my cousin Ashley, 25F, were absolutely furious. Ashley had also recently gotten engaged, and Karen firmly believed that Ashley, being the youngest and prettiest of the cousins, deserved the heirloom ring. She actually called my fiance and demanded he hand it over before he proposed. He obviously told her to kick rocks. To celebrate our engagement, we hosted a nice dinner party at our house for the extended family. Karen and Ashley showed up, glaring at my hand the entire night. After dinner, I was helping clear the plates. I went into the kitchen to hand wash a few of the delicate serving platters. Because I was terrified of harsh dish soap damaging the antique setting of my ring, I took it off and placed it carefully in a small ceramic dish on the kitchen windowsill. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, and turned around to grab my ring. The ceramic dish was empty. The ring was gone. My heart literally stopped. I frantically searched the floor, the sink, the counter. Nothing. I walked out into the living room, pale as a ghost, and told everyone the ring was missing. The entire family started searching. We checked under the rugs, in the couch cushions, everywhere. During the search, Karen suddenly grabbed her purse, looked at her watch, and said, "Oh my goodness, Ashley, look at the time. We have that dress-fitting appointment early tomorrow. We have to go." They basically sprinted out the front door before anyone could even say goodbye. My mom tried to comfort me, saying maybe it fell down the drain, but my fiance, who is a very analytical guy, just quietly pulled out his phone. We have a Furbo dog camera sitting on the bookshelf in the open concept living room. It points directly toward the kitchen island and the windowsill. My fiance opened the app, went to the cloud playback from 10 minutes ago, and we watched the footage. Clear as day, in 1080p high definition. The camera caught Karen sneaking into the kitchen while my back was turned at the sink. She quickly snatched the ring out of the ceramic dish, shoved it deep into her designer handbag, and walked out. I was seeing red. I immediately called Karen's phone. She answered, sounding incredibly smug. "Karen, I know you took the ring," I said, my voice shaking. "I have it on camera. Bring it back right now or I am calling the police." Karen literally scoffed. She laughed into the phone. "Oh, calm down, drama queen. You don't deserve that ring anyway. Ashley's fiance couldn't afford a nice diamond, and it's our family's heirloom. It belongs to Ashley now. What are you gonna do? Arrest your own aunt? You wouldn't dare ruin the family over a piece of jewelry." She hung up on me. She thought I was bluffing. She thought family loyalty would protect her from the consequences of stealing a $25,000 diamond. Quick pause here. The sheer, unadulterated audacity. "What are you going to do? Arrest your own aunt?" Yes, absolutely yes. Theft is theft, and stealing an heirloom ring from your own niece while she is washing dishes is the lowest, scummiest thing you can do. The delusion of thinking the family will just shrug their shoulders and let you keep a $25,000 diamond because you are the aunt is staggering. Let's see how fast Karen regrets her life choices. I didn't even call her back. I called 911. The police arrived at my house. I showed them the Furbo footage. I provided the official appraisal documents proving the ring's $25,000 value, and I gave them Karen's address. Because the value of the stolen property was over $10,000, this wasn't petty theft. In my state, it was a Class C felony, grand larceny. 2 police cruisers drove directly to Karen's house. They didn't knock politely. They pounded on the door, told her she was a suspect in a felony theft, and demanded she hand over the ring. Karen absolutely panicked. She started screaming that it was a family dispute and that I had given it to her. The police didn't care. They told her she was on camera, and if she didn't produce the ring immediately, they were going to get a search warrant and tear her house apart. She sobbed, went to her bedroom, and brought the ring out. The police handcuffed her right there in her foyer and walked her out to the squad car in front of all her neighbors. But the fallout gets so much better. Ashley's fiance was at their house when the police raided it. When he found out that his future mother-in-law had stolen a $25,000 diamond to upgrade his fiance's ring, and that Ashley was completely complicit and happy to accept stolen goods, he was utterly disgusted. He packed his bags that exact same night, broke off the engagement, and told Ashley he refused to marry into a family of delusional criminals. Karen spent the weekend in a holding cell before her husband could post bail. My entire extended family completely disowned her. She is currently facing 1 to 5 years in prison. Her daughter's wedding is canceled, and she is a social pariah in our hometown. My fiance and I got the ring back safely, and we are getting married next spring. The only family members not invited are currently dealing with their criminal defense lawyers. Don't mess with the Furbo. I am giving this a standing ovation. What are you going to do? Arrest your own aunt? The answer is a resounding yes. I love that the poster didn't hesitate. She didn't let the toxic family unity guilt trip stop her. Karen took her entitlement way, way too far, and she instantly nuked her own life and her daughter's marriage in the process. I am so glad Ashley's fiance ran for the hills. What a fantastic resolution. All right, let's bring it home with the final story of the video. This one is titled, "My power-tripping boss canceled my 3-week honeymoon the day before my flight, so I instantly quit and he crashed a $50 million company server." I am a 30-year-old guy, and I used to work as a senior systems engineer for a massive financial tech company. For 2 years, I had been planning a 3-week dream honeymoon to Japan with my wife. We had saved up over $15,000 for this trip. The flights were booked, the luxury hotels were non-refundable, and my PTO had been officially approved in writing by HR 8 months in advance. I was a critical employee. I built the architecture for our main production servers, and I was the only one who truly understood the back-end infrastructure. About a month before my wedding, upper management brought in a new director of IT named Brad, 45M. Brad was one of those corporate alpha male types who read a book on disruptive leadership and made it his entire personality. He constantly talked down to the engineers, micromanaged every project, and loved to assert his dominance. Fast forward to the Friday before my honeymoon. I had already been married the previous weekend, and my flight to Tokyo was scheduled for 8 a.m. on Saturday. I had spent the last 2 weeks training my junior engineers on how to handle the basic server maintenance while I was gone. My out-of-office auto-reply was set. I was literally packing up my desk at 4:30 p.m. Brad's assistant walked over to my cubicle and told me Brad needed to see me in his office immediately. I walked in. Brad didn't even look up from his computer. "Hey," Brad said casually. "So, corporate just mandated that we migrate our entire secondary database to the new cloud servers this weekend. It's a massive push. I need all senior engineers on deck." I stared at him. "Brad, I am leaving for my honeymoon tomorrow morning. I am out of the office for the next 3 weeks. My PTO was approved 8 months ago." Brad finally looked up, gave me a condescending smile, and leaned back in his leather chair. "Yeah, about that," Brad said. "I am officially revoking your PTO. Business needs come first. If this migration fails, we lose millions. You are the lead architect. You need to be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. You can reschedule your little vacation." I was stunned. "Reschedule? Brad, it is a non-refundable $15,000 trip to Japan. My flight is in 14 hours. I am not canceling my honeymoon." Brad stood up, trying to physically intimidate me. He slammed his hand on the desk. "Let me make this perfectly clear to you. You are an at-will employee. If you're not in this building, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., consider yourself terminated for job abandonment. Your choice." He thought he had me cornered. He thought the threat of losing my salary would force me to bend the knee, cancel the trip of a lifetime, and eat the $15,000 loss just to prove he was the alpha dog. He took his power trip way, way too far. Oh, the arrogance. The absolute unmitigated gall of this man. Trying to cancel a $15,000 honeymoon 14 hours before the flight just to flex your managerial muscles? PTO is part of your compensation package. It is not a favor they grant you. If your company cannot survive you taking an approved vacation, that is a management failure, not an employee problem. Let's watch this guy destroy his own career. I looked Brad dead in the eyes. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my company badge, and set it gently on his desk. Then I unclipped my company cell phone from my belt and set it next to the badge. "I quit," I said, effective immediately. I turned around and started walking toward the door. Brad's smug expression instantly vanished. The reality of what just happened hit him like a freight train. "Wait, hold on," he yelled, chasing me out of his office into the hallway. "You can't just quit without 2 weeks' notice. You're the only one with the primary admin credentials for the legacy servers." "You literally just told me I was an at-will employee, Brad," I said loudly so the entire bullpen of engineers could hear. "You threatened to fire me if I went on my honeymoon. You made your choice. The admin passwords are in the sealed IT vault envelope with HR. Good luck with the migration." I grabbed my backpack from my desk, high-fived one of my junior engineers who was trying not to laugh, and walked out of the building. My wife and I had the absolute time of our lives in Japan. We ate amazing food, visited the temples, and completely unplugged. When I turned my personal cell phone back on after landing in Tokyo, I had 47 missed calls from Brad, 12 from the VP of Engineering, and 5 frantic voicemails from HR. I didn't answer a single one. When I finally got back to the States 3 weeks later, I met up with my former junior engineer for a beer, and he told me exactly what happened. Because I quit, Brad decided he was going to look like a genius and run the server migration himself. But Brad didn't understand the custom architecture I had built. On Sunday morning, Brad executed a mass transfer script that completely bypassed the safety protocols. He crashed the entire $50 million production server. The company's primary client portal went offline for 36 hours. The financial loss was astronomical, not to mention the massive hit to their corporate reputation. When the CEO and the board of directors demanded to know why the lead architect wasn't handling the migration, HR showed them the emails where Brad illegally attempted to cancel my approved PTO the day before my wedding trip and threatened to fire me. Brad was fired that Tuesday for gross negligence and unprofessional conduct. He was escorted out of the building in tears. The VP actually offered me my job back with a 30% raise and a senior director title. I politely declined because I had already accepted a better paying job at a rival tech firm while sitting in a bullet train in Kyoto. Always call a toxic boss's bluff. They are never as smart as they think they are. I am howling. The absolute cinematic perfection of handing over your badge and going to Japan while your boss literally sets the company servers on fire. Brad thought he was playing a game of chicken, but he didn't realize he was standing on the train tracks, costing the company millions of dollars and getting fired all because you wanted to flex your authority on a Friday afternoon. That is the definition of instant regret. Good for the poster for getting a better job and enjoying his honeymoon. Flawless execution. Okay, so I don't know how many of you actually watched this full episode today, but if you did, thank you. Seriously, thanks a lot. Alright, I'm gonna get back to my work now. So yeah, bye. Have a good day. Peace.